So looking at March, March is the third month of the year, representing the three copies of chromosome 21. What actually happens during cell division? During meiosis, each parent is expected to contribute 23 pairs, 23 chromosomes from both parents. By the end of that session, the child form is expected to have 46 chromosomes. But in some cases, the chromosome 21 has an extra copy, while in other cases, in some cases where translocation occurs, you will see that the chromosome 21 joins chromosome 14. The genetic materials are there, but it is just in the wrong place. At the end of the day, the child form will have just 45 chromosomes. In a condition where a child has 45 chromosomes, the child will have a condition called the Turner syndrome. But in a situation whereby there is an extra copy of chromosome 21, it leads to Down syndrome. So that is how Down syndrome uh, is being brought about, or that is how that is what happens in a Down syndrome condition. Now, Turner syndrome is something that has not been talked about because when you see them, they just tend to have just a little resemblance of Down syndrome, but everything in them functions very well. They do not have any characteristics of Down syndrome because, I mean, they are completely opposite or different conditions. We're still talking about Down syndrome, and this year's theme for the awareness is Together Against Loneliness. What does it mean? It simply means that we should learn to involve them in the society, in our various communities, even in the family, even in the government. Let's learn to build positive relationships and friendships with them because these are some of the things that will make them feel that they belong to the same society that we are. Inclusion is very important. Inclusion should cut across every aspect. I'm sure there are some people who will not even want to employ adults with Down syndrome in their organization simply because they feel they have disability. The truth is, there are a lot of adults with Down syndrome that that can perform every other activity that other regular adults can do. So why should we deny them? Just because of how they look, or just because of how just because they have a disability. So I'm calling on everyone, all the stakeholders, people who have companies, families, everybody, to include them in any little way that we can, so that we can make them feel that they are meaningful members of our society. So sometimes people always ask me this question: why is it that children with Down syndrome or adults with Down syndrome can just stand and be sleeping? Have you ever seen that? I have, in my years of practice. So I will share a few reasons why that happens most of the time. So when we talked about the characteristics of Down syndrome, you notice they have hypotonia. Hypotonia means they have low muscle tone. So because of that, there's fatigue and there's low energy. Okay. So just imagine you are just sitting there, you have fatigue and low energy. There is a high tendency for you to just fall asleep. So it's funny that it happens in children with Down syndrome. They can stand and be dozing off. So you see one of the reasons why they require care and attention. Okay. Another reason for that is some of them may have slower, slower, slower metabolism because of that heart condition that some of them have, not all. Some of them usually have a hole in the heart, thyroid, and some other disease. So it makes them to have slower metabolism. Because of that, it causes them to always fall asleep so quickly. Some also have sensory dysfunction. So if you look at them very well, you see that they require a lot of sensory integration in the aspects of deep pressure, deep pressure mostly through their feet or through their legs. So what is deep pressure? For some of you who are not familiar with these special education terms. So deep pressure is a sensory integration technique whereby we apply a lot of pressure to a particular area. You can do that using weights. You can do that using weighted blankets. You can do that using sensory jackets. Okay, so they generally need that proprioceptive input. That is just what I try to explain now. That's the body awareness. So there are different aspects that individuals with Down syndrome experience difficulty in. For example, some of them usually have delayed speech. Uh, Mostly they start talking around age 2 or 3. Some develop speech quite early, but a number of them experience some form of speech delay. Another aspect is poor fine and gross motor skills. So you see them having difficulty in navigating through things like lacing their shoes, writing, feeding, just because of the low muscle tone that there's a lot of their of activities that has to do with large muscles and even the small muscles. You see some of them they struggle with staircase. You have to teach them how to use the staircase. Um, and another aspect is sensory regulation. Some of them may experience some form of sensory dysfunction, which I mentioned earlier in this video. Things like poor proprioception. Some of them experience oral sensitivity. Some of them, just a little, might have a comorbid condition. So you might see them having Down syndrome and autism spectrum disorders, or Down syndrome and learning disabilities. Those are the category who have cognitive disabilities. So I am not saying that all children or adults with Down syndrome have autism or they have learning difficulties. No, a good number of them are able to do age appropriate cognitive tasks. All they need is just a little support to help them navigate through with academics and other areas that we need assistance. So what are those therapies